Good morning and thank you for joining us. I am Alero Edu and this is Sunrise.
Good morning, I'm Nel Taiwe, and beautiful, beautiful day it is. I was almost spoiled by some sad incident though.
The traffic.
Yeah, but the traffic was particularly caused by an accident, an unfortunate incident along the road.
Oh, you saw the accident?
Not exactly, but from a distance, because you're stuck in that place and then you find your way around, go to, do a detour, come out in front, and then you look behind, far behind you, and you're seeing at a point where the entire vehicle stopped. So there's something in front that would have caused all of them to stop.
Yeah.
And that was the situation. So, well, I do hope, but I'm sure our correspondent will tell us what the situation is.
In time. Talking about traffic in in a particular part of Lagos, I witnessed something the other day. A company truck plucked somebody's wing mirror off and they tried to run away. But they forgot that their name was written on their truck. And guess what? They had no number plates, both front and back. And guess what? Apropos mistress, journalist, I brought out my phone and I took the picture of the truck. Apno table water. Be careful. And when your drivers are driving your company cars that have your names on them, do tell them to be extra careful because you might be held liable for something you don't know anything about. Now, I am suspecting that this person is now making contact with Apno Water to get them to fix her car. And guess what? When you guys are driving and you see women, you seem to just get all courageous and muscular. It's only a woman. Let's deal with her. Comments, please.
It's not just about. It's not necessarily because it's a woman.
Okay.
As far as it's another vehicle, my wife would always say, drive for yourself and drive for the other person. Just pretend you're driving the other car for the other person. Because the other person might just be lost. Case in point, the first accident I had, I was driving and actually, for a split second, slept off.
No!
So I hit this guy and he comes down.
You hadn't slept the night before?
I slept. Incidentally, I do remember that day because that's the first accident, so that memory is still fresh. So the guy came down, looked at me and said, leave your troubles at home and drive. And he entered his car.
I bet they go. Carry your trouble, they go.
But for me, it was like, oh.
How right.
Very right.
Leave your troubles,
leave whatever it is that's bothering you at home and drive for you and for the other person.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that made me join the road safety special marshals. Because at the end of the day, we still need to educate everyone around us that, hey, driving is not just entering the car, shifting the gear, and moving it along the road. No. Besides understanding the traffic rules, some people will tell you, I've studied the traffic rules, I know all of it.
Yeah, right.
There is a skill to driving, and we need it.
And law enforcement, for crying out loud, if you dealt with road traffic offenders more decisively, maybe we'd be better drivers. We stopped at a traffic light this morning. A downfall driver found a way to overtake us on the curb and just run the red light. And I'm thinking, what kind of madness is this so early in the morning? Where are you rushing to? There's no traffic.
We tend to sometimes laugh at these things because you don't want to vent, you don't want to rage on the road. And sometimes just stop. Sometimes I just move away from my lane, slide. When I see someone trying to shunt, and many times not it's downfall drivers, human beings who are supposedly elitists, you see them shunting because I have to get there first. So I just move slightly, and then I move out of my lane. So come and hit me now because you want to shunt. Are you the only person that's in a hurry? I asked that question many times because I'm like, come on. Most times the traffic in Lagos is not caused by an accident. Alero, many times the traffic in Lagos is caused by individuals who think, no, if I move this way, I can get there before the other people.
Deliberate mad action.
On a 2-lane road, you have 6 lanes. Caused by individuals who are supposed to be educated. I witnessed this one. One guy did something like that and the police stopped him. And then he was like, why are you stopping me? Can't you see those bus drivers doing the same? And the police looked at him and said,
Are you a bus
are
driver?
you a bus driver? He said, in pidgin, in the local English language, he said, Oga, see motorway they drive. See the bus where they there. Now they say, he
Good
could not have an
question.
answer.
Good question.
So me, I drove off and I was like, good for you. Because why do we do this? Aleo, sorry about for the person that was hit. Sorry that you had to witness it. And it's good that you
and
took
I've
a
got
picture.
pictures
It's good that you took a
of
picture.
the driver
And
and
the
of the truck.
Thank
and
you.
I have sent that picture to road safety. Why is that truck on the road with no license plate? Front or back?
Oh, you're talking about, what about the ones that don't have tail lights? No tail lights, nothing.
And
They're
most
all
of the time they're trucks.
They are trucks, and they are falling
Trucks,
apart.
yes.
So what's going on?
And in the
What's
night,
going
they're
on?
so dangerous. You're speeding down a highway and something is broken down in front of you,
And you
and
don't
there's
know.
no sign at all, and you just ram into it. That's
Or-
you. Good night.
Or there's so much smoke coming from the truck.
You can't even
And the lights are so dim that you can't even see them. What do you do?
And then they harass me for my roadworthiness. Those ones have roadworthiness certificates.
Yes, they do.
Law enforcement again, please rise up to your duty.
It's okay. Let's look at what we have lined up on the menu for today.
No, before we look at that, I'm waiting for guidelines as to how Nigeria is going to open up its country. What are the guidelines for eateries and restaurants and malls, churches? We are still waiting. Well, we still have 1 week, so
Yes,
we hope that...
they're working on it. I think the current situation, the kind of restrictions there are right now, are likely to be, transited into that guideline, because they will still remain for a long time. You know, the social distancing.
Of course they will remain
the
for a
mask,
long time.
The sanitizing of hands, washing of hands, and then minimal gatherings, minimal number of people gathering in any particular place. It's going to remain for a long time, because we still, I say we, are still learning to
deal with COVID-19, which doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Someone
the guidelines in other countries are things to, to actually listen to and learn from and expect, so you can prepare your mind for what is coming.
As I say, it is well.
It is well, and we shall get through this together.
Indeed.
Right. So we're going to start with Nigeria's growth within the pandemic. Did we grow at all?
Well, there's some kind of growth.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
we're innovation everywhere. Now we'll be looking at curbing abuse during the COVID-19. I mean, there have been reports of domestic violence, plenty of it all over.
Understandably.
Yeah.
And then COVID-19 again, fumigation as a response. Really? Is that working? Well, we'll be looking at that.
The Eid al-Fitr celebration, it's happening tomorrow. We'll be discussing that.
Salah. And then we shall close with the artist of the week. And he's a very interesting indeed. Musician, actor, all rolled into one,
And a very, very interesting fellow. You'll be glad to meet him. But just take a moment and we will be back. Just let you know that you can be a part of the conversations. Our Twitter handles will be on the screen. Pay attention today, especially so, because you might pick up one or two things that will help you in your growth process. We'll be back in a minute. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Alera, to the others.
Yes, now let's get the show on the road. Nigeria has woken up to a new social and economic reality since the COVID-19 hit us, hit the world. And Nigeria, being part of the world, has had its fair share of people being infected with COVID-19, and we have even managed to record a few deaths. Although some people still don't believe that there's anything like COVID-19. But the campaigns are still going on, trying to convince people that there is the coronavirus, this new strain of it that is ravaging the world, and it is actually killing people. So, we had our first case at the beginning of February. What has happened to us since then? Has there been any growth in Nigeria in any form since we were hit by this pandemic? This and some other similar questions we're going to put to our panel this morning. And our panel is made up of 2 gentlemen in Lagos and 2 in Abuja. And I will begin with the ones in Lagos. We have the CEO of Resource Intermediaries Limited, Mr. Soji Oyawoye. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we also have Mr. Adegoke Omotola, who is a management consultant.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And from Abuja, we shall have Mr. Collins Nwosu, who is the Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Economists. Welcome. As well as the convener, Nigeria First, Ezekiel Nya Etuk. Good morning to both of you. Can you hear me, guys, in Abuja?
I think they can.
Well, I hope
Yes,
you
very
can
well,
hear
loud
us.
and clear. Quite clear.
Now, let me start with Mr. Oyawoye. How much do you think this pandemic has affected Nigeria's, let's begin with the economy of this nation?
Well, actually, economy is where I practice. I'm also an economist by training, though I do more of HR consulting for a while now. The impact has been significant, and predominantly in the following areas. Businesses have been greatly affected. Now, the ripple effect of businesses being affected is unemployment. My co-panelists and I were just talking in the back room there about U.S. having over 40 million declared unemployed right now. The reality is we don't even have the statistics. But I can bet a lot of businesses have shut down, and they've had to shut down for 2 reasons. One, Nigeria is an economy that over the years, we're a happy nation. We're just excited. So there's a lot of business that is fed by that excitement, happiness with no substance as it is. So the reality of our times is with all of that shut down as it is. I mean, I walked in with my co-panelist, Goke, who I know very well. We're both wearing masks. I didn't know it was him. I didn't greet him until we got here and removed the masks. I mean, it's that bad. So businesses are affected, of course, because of the oil collapse and the nation's earnings capacity and government revenue. So unemployment has also grown. The pandemic is affecting everyone, regardless of your social status or your wealth. However, the poor are worse affected, unfortunately.
Okay. Mr. Motola, some big companies even are feeling this. We have heard of some that have gone into receivership, some that have declared bankrupt, even abroad. In Nigeria, the economy is run mainly by small and medium companies, businesses, and most of them are going to be forced to shut down. What does that mean for our economy?
Well, it's a major challenge, even for the government. And that's why we are finding a situation where there's this ease of lockdown. And I think even yesterday, the government of Lagos State came up with a 4-page guideline on register to open, which is to try to kickstart the economy again. And the government itself, I mean, we're not immune to what is happening globally. So if U.S. can have job losses of over about almost about 40 million.
40 million.
And NECA is saying that, the unemployment is going to be almost about 33.5% from 24%. And so for MSMEs, I think the government is moving in the right direction. The CBN, even Lagos State is also in the area of LSCTF, giving them a moratorium for those who have taken a facility. And also, beyond that, they're also trying to make sure that they get them to register these businesses, and so that they can look at their needs, I believe
and
that...
they're also giving them discounts, aren't they?
And giving them discounts. So
Yeah.
I think it's not a time to panic. I believe that it's a time for businesses also to reset. And going forward, there needs to be what I can call a collaboration. There's going to be mergers. Those who can get it right will come out of it much more better. But although there will be some casualties,
So just talked about, he said, excitement with no substance.
Okay.
You talked about there are going to be measures, especially for those who are able to ride the storms, able to ride the waters. But let me take you to Abuja. Collins, when you hear this kind of things, as regards excitement, no substance, what does that say of our infrastructure, economic infrastructure? We've not even entered the human capital first. Let's leave human capital. Let's look at the infrastructure that we have. Do you think this is an opportunity that has been taken to rejig?
Thank you, Nilta. I would like to paint a scenario. I think there is a huge opportunity here. And it's an opportunity for reset, as Goke has said. It's an opportunity for reset. We have infrastructure deficits, huge infrastructure deficits, which is affecting the economy. I mean, we can even see it in the supply chain. So global supply chain, local supply chains are affected. And those are the things that drive, some of the things that drive the economy. So I'll paint a scenario. Right now, with the work from home era coming on board, what you're seeing is more people are beginning to change the way they operate. Now, if I'm going to work from home, assumes that I have a home to work in and somewhere that is conducive. So other things, infrastructure now changes. My infrastructure needs now changes to the internet, for instance. I need power, I need internet. Are those available to me to enable me work from home? So I do not need to move to Lagos, for instance, if I have gotten a job in Lagos. I can stay in my remote rural area and work from there. What does that do for us? That means that cheaper houses can be built in the rural areas. Migration from rural to urban areas would reduce or be controlled. And you're not having...
Collins, I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you here. We need to take a very quick break. We'll come back, start off from that point, rejigging the infrastructure. Houses can be built in rural areas at cheaper rates and all of that. But we'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Festus Akimboye, while he's talking, he says COVID-19 pandemic is bound to have some serious implications for Nigeria's economy, and Nigerians should prepare for tough times. FG must be honest with Nigerians about it. Wasborn was talking about the women on the road. He says sometimes they are unnecessarily aggressive on the road, but it's not just about the women. Men are also sometimes unnecessarily aggressive. But Collins, we were talking about an opportunity, an obvious opportunity to rebuild infrastructure, housing, for instance, and light internet. Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Nilta. I was just trying to paint a scenario of what is possible and what is currently happening for quite a number of people. But you see, infrastructure challenges will not disappear overnight, because what brought us here, over time, there's been a decay in the infrastructure. So there's need to rejig it. And we have to think a bit differently about how we approach this, because the traditional methods of approaching the solutions may not work as it is. What is a stimulus, for instance, in its own case? A stimulus is basically something is happening and it's not moving as it should be. Then you try to stimulate it. You try to make it, wake up from where it was. So the stimulus packages that are going on right now that are meant to help small businesses may not necessarily help them with infrastructure. So we have to look at that. But there's a huge, huge opportunity for growth in the economy. There's a huge opportunity to rethink the way we approach infrastructural growth, so that supply chains are opened up, so that the new opportunities like the work from home I mentioned from is opened up. And it cannot be looked at from one view. We have to have a holistic view. It has to be beyond value chain. It has to be not just value chain, but value-driven infrastructure development. And that's why I gave the example of what will happen in housing. We have a deficit in housing already. So if people are getting new jobs and you're saying that they should work from home, you're assuming they have homes. But more than 20 of the 44 million, the figures aren't even clear because of statistics dearth. Where do they work from? What is the internet penetration? Do we have, someone asked, we have internet, but do we have the internet service because it's epileptic? Then power, can we adopt modular things? So there are opportunities that are coming up right now, as well as the challenges that already exist. But I say we have to think of it differently and bring solutions, not in the traditional form of things.
Architect Nyaitok, we have to think of it in creative way to bring out solutions from this. Some businesses are dying, but apparently some others are growing. Suddenly, some tailors that were not getting customers are suddenly getting customers making masks. So can we begin to look at more of these opportunities and how we can use that to move our economy and our social structure forward?
That with every sympathy to some people that have lost loved ones through the COVID and some other people whose businesses are suffering, let me say with every sense of responsibility, again, I say that COVID-19 is probably one of the best things that has ever happened to this country. So many people, so many of us have prayed and looked forward. At the time, I actually personally prayed that God should actually cock our oil wells. Let these oils dry up and let us wake up and live a real life. We've been living false life, fake life. Governors come to Abuja every day to come and just pick and go back home. I tell a very little story that illustrates this. In 2007, I wanted to contest the governorship of Akwa Ibom State, and I went to a very close friend of mine, Mr. Donald Duke, then, who was a governor. And he sat me down, and one of the things he said, I can't forget this. He said, yeah, that's what he calls me. He said, the difference between Akwa Ibom and Cross River is that Akwa Ibom has so much money, they don't need to think. Cross River, we don't have money, so all we do is think. And let me stop the story for that. Come to Nigeria. We're not thinking as a nation. We're not using the best that we have of us. We have a lot of false figures, false indices. I'm so happy to be with consultants and economists and specialists in the area, and I, an ordinary Nigerian, but that's just really the beauty of it all. We are at a point where the oil is dried up by COVID, dried in parentheses, and I'm so happy. But my greatest concern is, at this point in time, do we have leaders who are willing to step in and seize the moment? Or do we have people who are clueless and they're just wondering, what are they saying in America? Lockdown, oh, everybody lockdown. What are they saying in China? Wear mask, everybody, wear mask. And in Nigeria, wearing mask has become like a fashion statement, which has become chin masks. If we had thinking people, instead of saying wear mask, they will say cover mouth and nose. Because you have a man who wears a mask and the nose is completely open. As far as he's concerned, he's wearing mask. But he hasn't understood that the bottom line is cover your mouth and nose. Even our governors on television are talking to us with the mask there, but the nose open. And the average man thinks that's the right thing to do. Once I can get it down my chin, I'm wearing mask. And that's not the mentality that we must, if we are not careful, we'll end up having what we call double jeopardy. But if we are careful to have thinkers, I can't use this word enough, thinkers who sit down. My brother has just come to be an advocate for housing. God bless you, my brother. Now, one of the things that has come out now is working from home. If we are working from home, who is there to sit down? I'm so happy that the Minister of Housing, Mr. Fashola, asked me, send in certain documents, let me look at. Can we just network housing development outside the cities where we fashion those estates to work at home, dynamics? We make sure that certain things are provided within such an estate, something like the power. It does not take us too much
to have power within a certain environment. Number two, telecommunications. Even if it means free wireless internet, we do that so that we encourage a lot of our young people to go into such, not just hubs, estates. They live there, they operate there, they work from there. And what do you have? Urban-rural migration. What do you have? Opening up the rural areas. What do you have? Work from home and freeing us of all the infrastructural, weight of people coming to the city and everything. What do you have? A new thinking of people who are not looking for government, who are not looking for job, entrepreneurs. Go to a place like Akwa Ibom, you'll be amazed at the creativity of the young people on internet. In fact, I tell people that Akwa Ibom should forget agriculture, everything 100%, and build on AI, and build on, ICT. We will become the Silicon Valley of not just Nigeria, but the West African hub. Imagine these sort of hubs being there in rural areas because you don't need to come to the city. Maybe at weekends you can come in for the cinemas and go back. If we have people who are willing to think that way, at the end of COVID-19, people will say, Nigeria, this was designed by God to bless you. That's my take.
Again, back to what you said earlier, excitement, no substance. But from what the architect and Collins have talked about, Nigerians are thinking, even without infrastructure. Nigerians have always been known to think. Do you see this as another opportunity for those thinking and those not thinking to come together and innovate?
Well, the thing with thinking is first, in reality, everything is created twice. Everything is first created in our thoughts, and then it is acted out. I beg to differ that the bulk of that thinking are for selfish pursuits, not selfless pursuits. And the major problem I envision we have as a nation is we keep on saying Nigeria this, Nigeria that. Who is Nigeria? Nigeria is not the geographical space. Nigeria really is you and I. What is the quality of your thinking? If there's an announcement today on Channels TV that I've just been appointed a minister, my old schoolmates would host me to dinner. My village would want to, these are people who never came to help me with children's school fees or my house rent. So there's a lot of thinking. I take that. But if we'll stretch it, I just came in through traffic getting here. I saw a lot of beautiful cars taking one way. That's a lot of the thinking. So I think negative. A lot of that thinking is not selfless until we begin to think for the other person, not for me and my family, right? That, I think, is a fundamental problem. So yes, there's a lot of value, there's a lot of creativity that is available and inherent. But if you check and sit down with 80% of those doing that thinking, the ultimate end of their thinking is for me. So until we change, so the real Nigeria is you and I. It's not the leaders. There's nothing wrong with us.
So you're implying that this kind of thinking, even though we seem to be growing in the midst of a pandemic, it's a warped kind of thinking?
It is. I mean, you all heard recently, it's public, when the MD of a bank goes on air and says, I'm sacking practically all of the bank. Why? Because there's a pandemic. We've been making some losses. How about when you're making profits?
And pots and pots.
Did you pour it back to those staff?
True.
So you can't spend a few months in losses? So there's a lot of thinking, but a bulk of it is selfish.
Okay. We're talking about this being an opportunity for Nigeria to rejig and rethink and reset. Part of this resetting, something you mentioned earlier, was how to get the small businesses going again. And part of that plan is access to funds. Over this past week, there's plenty of talk on radio, on television, as to how banks should make more money available. Even the CBN has come out and said banks should make money available to small businesses. But my thought is, Is anybody thinking of how this money is going to be paid back? Small businesses who are about to go under, some of whom have already gone under, you want them to come back and you want them to go and borrow money to come back. Are you thinking of how they're going to make enough money to be able to pay back their creditors?
Well, if we look at it from that perspective, we might not even encourage government to, because they're also listening to, this program. But I would like to say that there are a lot of vibrant SMEs and those who are, within the innovation space, particularly IT, and doing wonderful things. I think this is a time for government to really show up and provide the necessary leadership. Even in the UK, you find that there's what you call furlough and so on and so forth. It's still going to be in place till probably September, and even those billionaires are tapping into that facility. Yeah. And so for the SMEs, we have no, there are systems that need to be in place. I mean, there are already systems in place, even by LSCTF and, other government agencies that have been, doing that. I think we shouldn't look at it from just the perspective of, are they going to pay back? Because some are already dying.
But that's the priority of the bank.
I know.
How am I going to get my money back?
That's why I said the systems are already in place. The systems are in place, I mean, for example, as an SME, you don't just approach a bank and they'll give you the funds. They look at your collateral, look at your history, they look at your, in terms of, even the business, how long has it been in existence and so on and so forth.
In reality, those that are intended to benefit would not get it by those structures.
No, what I'm saying.
Because they won't have those.
Correct, they won't have those systems.
The systems was being in place because, I mean, what is the, safety of funds? Because government is not just going to be dishing out funds.
Father Christmas.
Yes, and so there has to be business structure for any, even those who are listening now. If you have a business and you don't have a structure, then you will not be able to tap into the funds that are available, even the ones from CBN. So structure. That's the way forward. That's the way forward. Structure.
If I may, can I throw some light on that? Now, you see, money always pursues value. I am strongly against a business, small or big, going for loans as a first option, especially when you're struggling to survive. It's like someone who has fallen into a ditch, right? What you want to do in a ditch is to stop digging. Taking a loan when your business is dying or about to die actually digs the hole further, because you are taking a loan to take care of outstanding liabilities. In the next 1 or 2 months, that loan is due for repayment. You haven't solved the past problem. You've just worsened it. Now, but if there's value to be given, so my advice basically for small businesses or any businesses, get a business coach. You see, we make a mistake of that. So who is a coach, basically? A coach is someone who's seen further or who has been where you'd like to be, right? Experience is not the best teacher. Somebody else's evaluated experience is the best teacher. So what someone has achieved in 20 years, you can do it in 5 years if you engage a business coach. But many are hesitant to do that because they just want to learn by themselves.
It still goes back to structure. I mean, the coach is going to teach you structure.
Exactly. So loan won't be the option.
Okay, I was going to take this to Collins because I know I have an idea that you and your institute, you work with small businesses, especially in the area of export, not just import, because Nigeria has been known to be an import country. But you've been talking about export and all of that. Is there a structure, even now, before the pandemic, within the pandemic, how are those businesses thinking? Are they still thinking export? Are they still thinking that they have what it takes to feed the rest of the world when within there's no food, so to speak?
I think that's a significant area to look at. And you cannot look at it in isolation. So I'll take us a few steps back. One is we have to think of the end result. What do we want to achieve as a nation? What do we want to achieve as a people? And Mr. Yahweh has clearly said it. Nigeria is not a geographical location. It's you and I. So you and I, what do we want to achieve? When you talk about a Nigerian, what does a Nigerian look like? What would you say a Nigerian should be? When we have those definitions and we start running, it makes it easier to run. So it brings me down to export, the SMEs that are running export, because we've been trying to build SMEs to have a global presence. So take you from your local business to global presence. And one thing I can tell you is this: collaboration is key. The infrastructure is what it is. We're not going to change that right immediately, but we'll say there's need for support in that area. But collaboration is key. So we're going to have to need hubs to work. Now, what have we done so far? Is to look for cooperatives. Cooperatives meaning people who have like minds, people who have similar operations. So we'll go for share, for instance, you go to the share people, the community, and say, hey, look, as a people, you can generate this volume. So now we're doing it in a local community, so we're keeping them engaged. Again, going back to making use of what is available. So that community is going to produce to certain standards. Now, they cannot do it on their own. That's why we're intervening. They can't do it on their own because, for instance, the cost of certification is so high. And they need to get certain certification to meet the global standards. So
Collins,
when we're looking
apparently
at...
every time you have to talk, that's when we need to go on a break. But please don't lose your train of thought. So we'll come back in a minute and tidy this up, please. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Ndubisiwa says the lockdown should have been and can still be used to improve on quality of roads and complete ongoing road projects across the country, especially in the southeast and south-south interstate link roads that are mostly in a sorry state. Elder Daria Debanjo says it's unfortunate that in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. We have vibrant personalities but no cohesion. But is the political leadership ready? He says it goes beyond politics. Collins, you were talking about the way forward.
Yes, I think the thing is we have to begin to look inwards. And I was given an example of what we're doing in the export space. So working through communities and then trying to bring those communities together, call them cooperatives, and have a shared value. So with the shared value of those communities, with those individuals who are Nigerians, bringing together their resources. So I bring my 1 ton of whatever I have, the next person brings 1 ton of whatever they have, and we're able to meet the scale. And on the investment sides, we now bring the technical expertise, we bring in the certification and all of that. So it's a structure of a sense. And the point being that we can't go it alone. You have to look for like minds and others that you can go it with. Our colleagues in Lagos with you there have mentioned a few things. You don't pour water into a sinking boat. Nonetheless, you look out for the opportunities and see how you can pull them out. So if we're going to be investing, if the banks are going to be putting money in small businesses, then they need to vet the businesses that they're putting money in. The current system that is saying, come, let's train you for a couple of days is effective, but it could go deeper. For instance, I say the University of the Igbo mentorship system, where you have people who have gone through proper trade or whatever businesses that they've gone through that system, they've gone through the mentorship, they now understand how these things work. If you pump money into those systems, you're sure that they can, regenerate. So I'll put it this way. If I take money and give it to someone who's in the corporate world, who hasn't had that experience, and give him, say, 2 million naira, at the end of the year, I may come back and he will tell me, I had to pay for an office, I had to pay for this, I had to pay for that. I've not been able to generate funds. But if I take 500,000 naira and give it to someone who is already running successfully that business, maybe those using Abuja, for instance, I go to the Apple market and look for 1 or 2 of those boys that have just been freed from their ogas, and I give them 500,000 naira each. By December, same time as the corporate person, I will see that this guy has used his 500,000 naira. So what has happened? One has gone through an education and an enlightenment system. He's gone through a form of coaching, as Mr. Yahweh has said. He's gone through a form of business coaching that has empowered him and given him the capacity to do what is required. So capacity is a huge thing that we lack. you know, we can't look at the current issues in isolation. I said we have to look at the nation and say, what do we want to be? What do we want to look like at the end of the day? I'll give another example. We've been at home for a couple of weeks. Schools are on lockdown. And I asked myself, what do my children really need to learn? Because is the 1+1 working for them? Is that what is going to take them through to survive? Are we just educating them for the sake of they have a degree? Or is it something that they can use and bring back into society? So some of the things that we've engaged in are a little bit different. So we need to rethink our curriculum. We need to think of how we're integrating with those who have really, really worked and succeeded. Remember, our Bureau of Statistics is saying that over 80% of Nigeria's GDP is run, non-oil export is run by small businesses. And if that is the case, then that's 80% of our economy that we're not paying attention to, the way we should pay attention to it. So we're doing palliatives, we're doing stimulus. Remember, I said stimulus is just that something is already in place and it's dying, then you stimulate it. But nothing is in place right now. So this is ground zero. And as architect said, we have to just look at ground zero and rebuild from ground zero. So think of the end in mind, frankly.
Okay. Ezekiel, this started from importation and export, and it was actually about food. So let me take it back to food. Before the pandemic, we already had problems in that sector, in the agri sector. We had herders and farmers clashing in most of, well, in the food basket of Nigeria. And then this pandemic comes along and it actually compounds our problem. So let us look at the near future. How do we stand regarding feeding ourselves as a nation?
Good question, probably not to an excellent person. The reason is that I'll rather talk generically, let me put it that way. It doesn't take rocket science for you to know how food comes about. In Nigeria, farmers go to farm and the produce of the farmers, because we don't run these large-scale farms, the produce of the farmers come to feed us. Now, farmers have not been farming because of the herders' clash, with the farmers. They've not been farming before the pandemic. And then the pandemic comes. We didn't have strategic thinkers who would say, in locking down, let's do a two-step approach. While we are locking down the cities, can we now encourage even the city dwellers to go to the rural areas? What can we do on a massive scale on the food production, cultivation basis? How can we step up and say, enough of this herder-farmers clash? Do we have, the basic problem that we have is my concern about the drivers of the system. What is really their interest? Is it Nigeria, the welfare of Nigeria, the well-being of Nigeria, or is it politics? What is politically expedient? If you touch this, for instance, they are saying, oh, you have to open up, let people go to the mosque, let them go to the churches. Why? Because if they don't go, election is coming, it will affect us. They are our voters. What do our leaders have as the driving force for their decisions and policies? The well-being of the country or their political interest? Except we start to explore that. And let me draw two lines of Nigerians. Let me draw the line of the governors.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. I'm very sorry I have to interrupt you. We need to start winding down now, so I'd like to take your last word on this.
Okay. My last word on this is that, number one, we have been very unfair to the young people. Number two, we have an opportunity where I appeal to our drivers to do everything humanly possible. I'll end up with a little story. In 2019, after the elections, I called a group of young people, just my Facebook. I said, what can you do between 10 and 20, 50, 100,000? Apply if you can do something with it. About 800 people applied overnight. I said, okay, come physically to where I am. About 500 came. And I used 1 week to interview them one by one. and I gave them loans ranging from 10,000 to 100,000. I want to tell you that, number one, I invested on people who are already doing business, doing things, little things. Some needed just 20,000. And I want to tell you, number two, that so many of them have 100% repaid. We know that we put some
Very much,
obstacles in the
Ezekiel.
way
We
of
hear
our
you.
young
We
people.
hear you. We hear you. Collins, your final word, please.
I think it's important for us to look at this from an ends perspective, what we want to achieve as a nation, what we want to achieve as a people, and begin to put those structures in place. So if you're saying that we have to do food security, we need to do certain things, then where are the storages? Can we have local storages? Can we have education? Can we build capacity? It's important for those things to be done, because if, as Yahweh says clearly, you create twice. So if we cannot create in our minds, then we cannot have the physical manifestation. So we as a nation have to start thinking strategically in terms of everything. In terms
Thank you,
of
Collins.
everything.
Adegoke.
Thank you so much. I think at this point, there's a lot of opportunity in the system. SMEs, they need to collaborate. And if need be, some businesses have to pivot, change direction. Thank you. Yeah.
Rather than Nigerians' growth within the pandemic, I would change that to my growth within the pandemic. There's no Nigeria without you and I. And to move forward, get a life coach or get a business coach. And be careful. There are a lot of experts who call themselves coaches out there. Check the antecedents. What value have they created before you engage their services?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Soji Oyawoye, CEO, Resource Intermediaries Limited. Adegoke Omotola, Management Consultant, who both joined us from our studio in Lagos.
Thank you.
As well as Collins Nwosu, Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Economists, and Ezekiel Inya Etuk, Architect and Convener, Nigeria First, both of whom joined us from our studios in Abuja. Sorry, when you're having so much fun, there's never enough time. That is the nature of television. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sunrise will bring you another interesting topic in just a moment. Do stay with us.